Let me start this video by saying everyone is entitled to their own opinion. Usually when two people have a disagreement in a comment section or a message board like Reddit, it quickly deteriorates into insults. And that's just the nature of the internet. To say one side is more toxic than the other, or old Armored Core fans are gatekeeping for having an opinion, is completely ridiculous. My job in this video is not to sway people who disagree with me towards my side. I'm a part of the minority, but 100% alright with the fact that in a market there's supply and demand, and FromSoft is just supplying what the more popular demand is. It's the same reason I stopped making videos that only 5% of my audience would watch. Not saying I won't be mixing it up in the future, but yeah. I also understand that 99% of people, also including a large percent of the Armored Core community, are more than happy with the Souls-like features that will be present in the game. This will easily be known as the best Armored Core game, and I'm not trying to ruin that for anyone. I do, however, think it's important to voice my opinion and actually defend the minority that shares my same exact opinions. 70% of my opinions you've already heard in other content creators' videos. I was invited to an interview, and instead of the video coming out and defending my opinions, a video was made on it the next day practically bashing them, and telling the more unpleasant members of the Armored Core community to pretty much get effed in the A. Now, whether these actions were nothing more than a ploy to gain information that this person couldn't properly formulate themselves, I have no idea. But I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt, even if it's given this person extra clout and left me late to the party, having to make my own video, which I really don't have the time to make. By the way, feel free to throw your phone in your pocket, as a lot of this footage you've already seen before. Let's start with the topic of will Armored Core 6 be a Souls-like? This question really doesn't matter, and I'm going to be discussing the individual Souls-like features, but yes, I do believe that Armored Core 6 will play more like a Souls game than it will an Armored Core game. People have said it's too early to tell, but it really isn't. I've stayed away from speculation in the past that Armored Core 6 would be a Souls-like, and instead just relaying what the developers have said. But with this 4-minute video gameplay and Vatty's expert coverage of the 20-minute private showcase, there really isn't much left to speculate about. I 100% trust Vatty's voice on this, as he's played every single Armored Core game and talked about them in accurate detail. He knows what previous Armored Core games are and how they play, and he also knows how Souls games play. The first big thing I have to dispute is when people say Armored Core games have changed so much in the past, what gives Armored Core the right to stay an Armored Core game? To answer this, we have to look at the previous Armored Core games and explain why they changed. Every PS1 and PS2 game has been a steady progression of the base Armored Core. Mistakes were made when I'm pretty sure the game was ported to a new engine starting with Nexus. The overheating mechanic was previously in 2nd and early 3rd gen, but starting with Nexus it was overtuned, causing it to be the primary concern when it came to making builds. Despite the poor decision with overheating, these were 100% in fact still Armored Core games. When next-gen consoles came around, Miyazaki switched things up a bit, but the game still shared the same DNA. Energy could regenerate while you were boosting, and the HUD became more minimalistic. Instead of needing an extension unit, all cores could quick boost and quick turn naturally. Head features, optional slots, and diversity in legs were removed from the game or toned down. These were controversial changes, but it meant you can use whatever head, core, or legs you wanted and still finish the mission. But aside from those changes, the customization was still really deep. Unfortunately, older FromSoft had money issues and had to deal with everything that comes from that. Frames were dropped, corners were cut, and some interesting concepts weren't properly delivered. The fight with Capricorn, for example. 4th gen was a bit more drastic of a change than previous games, but as I said, it shared the same DNA, and by most people was viewed as a positive change. Anyone trying out the Armored Core series for the first time will most likely gravitate towards For Answer, because it's a good game. When 5th gen came around, they rolled the dice. Big multiplayer games like Call of Duty were the focus of the industry, just like how Battle Royale games are to this day. FromSoft made the game a lot slower, even removing removing flying so that they could fit 4v4 battles into Armored Core. This, in my opinion, didn't work. The story took a huge loss having to reuse the same few enemies and same few areas for every mission. In my opinion, this decision to put all the focus into multiplayer is what quote-unquote killed the series. So as you can see through the 14 mainline Armored Core games, not including the Formula Front concept game, things didn't really change all that much until it hit the next-gen consoles where Miyazaki edited the formula. Then Miyazaki left for Souls, and the game was hugely changed to fit as a multiplayer-focused game, something previous games couldn't support. Now, were these changes put in place because the games were bad and had no solid footing? Absolutely not. The games honestly had different problems than a bad combat system. What's now considered basic controls took years to show up in the PS2 Armored Core games, and autosaves took even longer, coming out all the way in Armored Core 5. I say all this to say Armored Core had problems, but people are trying to justify the new hard lock and reactionary Souls type fights by saying previous Armored Core games just weren't good enough in that department, and I completely disagree with that statement. Before I start really complaining, I need everyone to know there's a reason why my channel picture is a Mask of the Mother. Armored Core might be my favorite series, but Dark Souls 1 is hands down my favorite game. I've put 4,000 hours into the original, and although later FromSoft Souls-like titles didn't grab me the same way, they are still the only games that I'll pre-purchase and actually take time off work to play. I am a Souls fan. The big issue here is anytime I go back to play any of the different Armored Core games, I don't play them because they're similar to Souls. I wouldn't want to pick up a Souls game and feel like I'm playing an Armored Core game, but here in Armored Core 6 they're clearly combining the two. Through the interview it has already been confirmed that all 4 weapons will have their dedicated buttons, and by default they'll all be on the triggers and bumpers. From has always stated they wanted to make the controls more easy to pick up than the last games. That being said, your thumb can't be in 2 places at once. You can't be trying to aim like you would in previous Armored Core games and using 2 of the face buttons to fly and quick boost. You would need a hard lock-on system like Souls to be able to fire your weapons and boost or jump. Many people, including an insider if I heard correctly, have compared this to an auto-sighting feature of 4th gen that could be toggled on or off to slightly assist aim. I enabled this feature and went into an AC test to show you its flexibility or lack thereof. As you can see, my targets are moving extremely slow, and any advanced maneuvering like flying over them or strafing to the side will instantly break the lock. It's safe to assume, based on Vaddy's experience watching the closed showcase and the fact there are 4 firing buttons yet the controls are being made simpler, that hardlock in Armored Core 6 will never break and your AC will most likely quick turn automatically to stay on target. If you look at the gameplay footage, there's a scene where the AC is flying directly above a boss or maybe a mini boss, and the second the boss goes underneath and behind the AC performs a quick turn instantly. Combine this with the fact that in multiple interviews and gameplay footage itself, we see reactionary style bosses that you would see in a game like Elden Ring, having to jump or in this case fly over attacks while dodging left and right to avoid telegraphed attacks. It's easy to say Armored Core 6 will play like a Souls game. The posture system is also something straight out of Sekiro, but instead of punishing the enemy with a riposte attack, you'll be landing your own combos from different weapons, including melee weapons if you have them. There's a little bit of something new here, but the gameplay obviously resembles a Souls-like game more than it does an Armored Core game. And to jump back and talk about reactionary bosses for a second, they have not been in previous Armored Core games. Yes, Black Glint had a Wrath of the Gods style attack that you had to boost away from in order to dodge, but you weren't deciding to jump over the sweep attack or boost left or right to dodge a specific sided attack. If you use some common sense, it's obvious to see that this is a Souls-like combat system. Once again, for 99% of people interested in Armored Core 6, this is obviously fine. The majority of people will call this an improvement. but in every previous Armored Core game, you had to rely on movement and aiming to overcome most of the challenges the game had to offer. Aiming was a big part of Armored Core, and that's been traded in for hard locks and secure posture system, but this time you decide your own combos. The fact of the matter is, this lowers the skill ceiling for the game. It's still going to be a hard game, maybe even the hardest Armored Core game when it comes to story missions, but we all know a few days after release someone's going to upload their own overpowered weapon setup that does the best job at both staggering and then punishing the staggered enemy, and the majority of the player base is just going to use that, especially in PvP. I mean, eventually it'll get nerfed like months down the line, but I guess you could say the same thing about previous Armored Cores, but with a higher skill gap, I do think that player skill would be the primary deciding factor in a firefight. To say these new systems were required for Armored Core to evolve is not true. FromSoft can make a 10 out of 10 game with these systems in place, or make a 10 out of 10 game without these new systems. This new gameplay style caters to Souls fans, not Armored Core fans. And keep in mind, we've had 7 Souls-like games from FromSoft, and thousands of Souls-likes from other studios. I waited a decade for an Armored Core game, not for Sekiro with robots using guns. It's obvious they put a lot of effort into appealing to the Armored Core fans through things like mech design, the assembly process, and mission-based levels, but that's not enough for me to say it's more like an Armored Core game. The core gameplay looks like Souls. I also wonder how meaningful the customization will be when you can just re-equip your mech right before a boss fight. A big meme in the Armored Core community is spending 4 hours customizing your mech just to beat a 5 to 10 minute mission. Listening to a mission briefing, then equipping your mech and leaving to go accomplish that mission is no longer a focus. Some people will call this a necessary evil, and it's going to be nothing more than reducing backtracking. Some other people say it was needed for long format missions, but Armored Core 5 did long format missions too. They even had checkpoints and helicopters that would not only refill you, but also allow you to change any parts on your mech. Don't get me wrong, refill stations have existed long before Armored Core 5, but calling in a helicopter to change parts, or even worse, change your parts in a loading screen, 100% will get rid of planning and challenges that come standard with almost every Armored Core game. Some people will say that having Shrines of Marika right before bosses was a right decision because it saves time, but then they'll also have no problem with wasting hours of time on horseback in subsequent playthroughs. That all being said, I think being able to instantly change your loadout right before a boss is more an excuse for the developers to make bosses more difficult, and also in a way less accessible when it comes to different builds. I mean, who can really complain whenever you die and you're able to just instantly change your loadout? Then there's the repair kits, which from this moment forward I'm going to forever refer to as Estus. Vatty says these are instant use and come back through the refill stations. People will defend these because the missions are longer, but then what are the refill stations for exactly? In the Crane interview it was mentioned that even at 60% health you wouldn't be in the safe zone. Mechs in Armored Core games always had quite a bit of health, so once again we're sacrificing something that comes standard in an Armored Core game for something you would find in a Souls game. Estus 100% did not need to be in the game, and having it in just means your maximum health is spread out in healing items, so you could, I guess, have a harder time with bosses. So to sum it up, they added in a lock system similar to Souls. They primarily focused on the reactionary style of bosses that are known for being in Souls. They added in a repair kit that will accomplish the same thing as an Estus flask in Souls, and they followed in Armored Core 5's footsteps of being able to change assembly throughout missions, which in turn makes it easier for the developers to get away with sloppier boss designs that not all ACs are properly equipped to overcome. I'm still buying this game on release, and even if I can't appreciate it as an Armored Core fan, I can still appreciate it as a Souls fan. Anyways, that's the end of the video. I can't wait to have a polite conversation with you all in the comment section. And just a little channel update, my life has gotten really complicated recently. If you haven't checked out the channel post, then go over to the community tab on my channel. I'm not gonna have a lot of time to make super good edits on all these videos and make sure everything I'm talking about is properly on screen. But yeah, sorry for that, there's not much I can do. All I gotta say is hope you all have a great day.